Welcome back to the Pixelists Podcast, everybody. The podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. And as always, we're your hosts. That's Blake. I'm Will. And today we're here to talk a little worlds beyond number, the wizard, the witch, and the wild one. How are you doing today, my friend?
Doing okay. I was up really late working on some work,
Working on some work.
and didn't get a lot of sleep. So I'm just tired. But it's a new
Case of
week.
the Mondays.
Case of the Mondays. But anyway, no, I'm excited. I mean, I'm also in this like weird section of my life where this feels like this is going to get extremely introspective. It's not. I was just going to say it's like the gap weeks between D&D sessions.
Yeah.
So I'm always kind of like, a little low during those times. But,
Well, did your one campaign recently pick back up, right? Or did that fall through?
It did. No, it did. And we played last week,
Okay.
but that campaign plays once a month.
Okay.
So I got 3 weeks till the next session.
Now you're in the dark times again for a little bit.
Yes. But that campaign just hit 1 year.
Dang.
So
That's awesome.
Yeah. Got two. Well, I want to say 2 campaigns. The second one's not active currently, but I did have a dinner with the second campaign people the other night.
Yeah.
And they were like, "When are we getting back for D&D?" I was like, "Y'all need to stop popping out babies."
Yeah.
It's
So
on you all.
selfish,
Yeah, seriously.
Like, think about the D&D group. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, but
Anyway,
that's exciting that even though you're in the interim, because that campaign just came back though, right? Because it was on a break too.
yeah, right.
Yeah. So at least back in the swing.
But you know what though? I had this moment. I don't know how you feel about this. Do you ever, since you're not actively DMing, do you still like on your walks or like shower time, like ideate like plot threads or like,
Yeah.
did that ever happen for you?
Yeah. No, they won't necessarily be specifically intended for like a D&D sesh. But
Right.
like both of us have like loved writing our whole lives. So like I'm
Totally.
always
Yeah.
thinking of stuff like that, and I like write down stuff in my notes that like I don't have
Oh,
like an
we need.
intended purpose for
Well,
it, but it's just like if ever I need something.
well, and when you were, I almost just said something that I'm not supposed to say. We were talking the other day, and you mentioned the was it Twitter or Tumblr? Your writing.
Oh yeah,
It was
Twitter.
So I admire that about you, about like this appreciation and thought process for writing.
Yeah.
You and I, as some of we've talked about like the deep lore on the channel before, back in Chubb's DBZ RPG where we would write. Bro, we would write. I mean, do you remember those nights of like just
Bro.
cranking out like
Yes.
10 pages of content?
Like we would have like 12-hour sessions of just writing.
Yeah. It was so fun. It was god awful though. I mean, the writing is, not much has changed today, but anyway, so that's, I do recognize what you're saying about like, not necessarily like in a D&D format, but like in a writing format.
Yeah.
Bro, you probably have some like crazy golden nuggets in some of those story threads.
Maybe even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. So, hopefully at least a few of them are good.
Do you ever like for me, when I like am thinking about a story or a story note, for me, I feel like it's unfulfilled if I don't get to experience it with someone. And that's like where the D&D part comes in.
Yeah.
How do you like appropriately shelf the thought where it feels satisfied to have navigated?
Yeah, that's
do you?
tough. I definitely understand what you're saying, because like a lot of it is like you have these grand ideas and like you really wish that it could like fully come to fruition. So I like in my own mind I don't have like this is going to make me depressed unless I get to do this, just because I think that would be extremely depressing. Because I mean, I have like thousands of notes in my phone. No, they're not all related to like story threads, but it's more of just like the cooking pot where like it'll stew and marinate, and maybe like 3 years later, like for whatever reason, it'd be like, oh, like this perfectly can fit here now. So all that to say is that I don't have like it doesn't have like a destiny in my mind. It's more so like, this is fun to think about. Let's remember it just in case type of thing.
Yeah.
But obviously it would be amazing if they all did get to, grow.
Would you ever see yourself as like a long time DM, running like a long form campaign? I mean,
like in a perfect world, I think that would be really fun.
Yeah. Okay.
So like I like that idea, but you know, there's a lot of extenuating circumstances
Yeah.
for that. But yeah, like
people's schedules for one.
yeah, yeah.
So
But yeah, in a vacuum, sure.
yeah. Yeah. I kind of wonder what could have been in the world of Anna and Abe.
Yeah,
You know, it's a little lore drop for our listeners. It's the name of the continents in Will's world.
indeed.
So
The colloquial names.
yes, true.
Yeah,
Yes. I wanted to try to go for it off the top of my head, but then I thought I don't think I can.
yeah. Anandariel was one.
That's what I was gonna say, but then I was like, I know it's not. Then I was like, but am I just thinking of Endario from Diablo?
That's
And so
probably
then I
where
was
it
like,
came from in my mind. I
yeah,
probably like started there and morphed
yeah.
it.
But Anandariel, and then I don't remember the other one though.
I think it was Abadrius, maybe.
Oh yeah,
Something like that.
that's a great name.
You know, you get like tropey because like, you know, you try to think of like the cool like Tolkien and like it was all just a mishmash of that stuff.
You know what though? Not to get us too off kilter here. I don't know what that phrase means, by the way. off kilter. I know how to
Yeah.
use it.
Yeah.
You know, although some of our listeners might be like, you did not use it correct at all. But anyway, I will say that like when you look at like Tolkien, and for those of you who are way more versed in like this kind of nerd culture than I am, definitely welcome your insights and critiques. But it feels like the Tolkien naming convention is so much better than like, have you ever seen like those fantasy? I don't know if you have since you don't DM as much anymore, but I've checked out in the past like the fantasy name generators. None of them are good because it's like so cliche names.
Yeah.
Like the dwarf character is Cragman Stonejaw, or that's mixing Critical Role, but
Yeah.
you know, just like random, it's just a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
You know, like the elf is, you know, Alaria Elvensong. You know,
Right.
and you're just like, okay, can we get like a name that's kind of makes sense? It's like fantasy driven, but it's not like, hey, I'm Chad.
Yeah.
I'm Chad Stone. Nice to meet you. You know?
Yeah, I
This is
totally know it.
Bob.
I could never really get good results from those name generators.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess
Anyway.
that's the benefit of being Tolkien because he invented the languages he used, you know, so he
Yeah.
had like his whole system to come up with those.
He really
yeah.
needed a hobby. So,
Yeah, definitely.
Anywho, have you had your coffee today?
I did have my coffee. I only just finished it like an hour ago though, so it was a little bit late, but I did.
I gotcha.
How
Cool.
about you?
I did. It was delicious. It was nice.
Delicious.
Well, I guess we should talk about
I guess,
What's
yeah.
Beyond, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe we should get to it. But couple quick things. Basically just the normal announcements. Join the Discord if you haven't already. Especially if you're a Worlds Beyond fan. As always, we're trying to grow our Worlds Beyond family, trying to preach the gospel of this show to anybody that will listen. But if you're already on this video, you're already in the fold. So I'm speaking to the choir here. But join the Discord. Come hang out with us there. Critical Role watch party this Thursday, per usual. But yeah, this is the arc finale that we're going to be discussing today. So we'll be on a bit of a Worlds Beyond hiatus content-wise for a little bit. Have they announced? I don't know if they've officially announced.
I don't think so.
So I would assume October sometime is when we'll be back.
Yeah.
But a little tease, we will have a little bit of content for you guys, Worlds Beyond related, between now and then. So I'll leave it at that, but if you want to, you're welcome to spice it up if you'd like.
We might have a special guest coming onto the podcast.
Ooh.
It's not my mom.
It's my mom.
Yeah.
She's a big fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got our arc review today. We'll have at least one other Worlds Beyond thing, and then, you know, depending on how long the break is, maybe we'd get together and do something else as well. But yeah, again, not the place to say it because you guys are already here, but the perfect time to catch up.
Who knows, man? Maybe someone stumbled across our video and they were like, you know what? I like the weird awkwardness. I like the nervous energy from these two people. So I'll click again.
I
I'll
come
check
for
out
the
the
coffee
videos.
talk. I'll reluctantly
Yeah.
stay for the D&D talk.
I will say if by chance you are watching this and you've never listened to Worlds Beyond Number, me personally, easily the best audio story driven. I don't even know how to quantify it. I mean, I guess you'd call it like a tabletop game or D&D, but even beyond those systems, it's incredible. It's an incredible experience. So definitely that is my earnest plug for you to check it out. And the episodes are pretty short, so it doesn't take that much to catch up either.
100%. And again, the arc finale, so the perfect time to catch up if you're not. But we got to remember to give this same spiel in our next Critical Role episode, because that's probably the more pertinent place to do it.
That's true.
I don't know if I used the word pertinent correctly there, but we're just gonna move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, you used it. You used it.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. But that's all I got. Unless you got any other announcements or anything.
I think we're good.
Alrighty. Well, in that case, you guys know the drill. And well, never mind. Hopefully, there's something I want to tell you, but it doesn't need to be in the podcast. So hopefully, I remember.
We keep having like these little things to each other that people are just like, "What is wrong with you guys?"
So I'm just calling attention to it now, so that I remember to actually talk to you about it.
You guys have to understand that Will and I don't talk outside of these recordings, so we have to like give signals to each other. You know, but anyway.
That's right. All right. But yeah, so you guys know the drill by now. We're going to launch into our recap of the episode before we give our actual thoughts and discussion on the episode. So I don't have the title. Do you perhaps know?
This was episode 34, Something to Remember You By.
Perfect. Legend. So yeah, we'll cut this recap out, host it separately on YouTube for your convenience. And if you're just finding yourself on the recap video, be sure to actually tune into the discussion, which will be linked down below. But alrighty. Episode 34. So we pick up with Ursulon and Suvi again, just waiting in this room while Ame is off, I think, speaking to Marara. Or am I getting confused? I'll get to it in my notes, but when I was laying the groundwork here, I couldn't remember where she was.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah. In any case, Ame is off. Suvi and Ursulon are waiting. So for those of you that don't remember, Suvi has 2 levels of exhaustion right now. So she is essentially just like dead man walking. And she asks Ursulon if the witches do decide to join up against the Citadel, are you going to join with them? So yeah, that's where Ame is. I guess the vote is happening,
right
or not. Why am I so confused right now with
It's
myself?
okay. It's it's kind of like directions, but story wise.
Yeah.
So Ame has left to go to the meeting, but they know she's stopping to see Marara first.
Okay.
So she is either in the meeting with Marara or she's already in the coven. I think by now she's already in the coven meeting for the vote. Okay. And Ursulon and Suvi are like on their own, like waiting for the vote.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And I'm sure I'll get to a line in my notes here that explains that. But anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Suvi asks, "Hey, if they vote to go against the Citadel, like, what are you gonna do, Ursulon?" And he says, "No, like, I will not join them in fighting against the Citadel. Instead, what I think I'm going to do is seek out those like Moro who seek to harm and subjugate my brothers and sisters. But no, Suvi, I am your protector, and I will not raise arms against you." Suvi then explains everything that basically happened to her before Ursulon and Ame had walked in earlier. She explains about the identify spell that she had cast on herself, what she saw in that vision, the scries, the Gaze spell?
Yes, yeah.
Gaze spell, the modify memory, and she goes, after she explains all of that, she says that I can only assume it was the Citadel that did this and that I had agreed to it. And I have just like forgotten because of whatever machinations are in place. And she says, I trust them. I've never had a reason not to trust them until right now. So I understand why you're mad, Ursulon. I just don't want to tear down my home. I want to save it instead. And she goes, and I think I need to return home in order to do that. And she says, I think I need to do that actually right now before this meeting ends and before I perhaps am not given that option anymore. So Ursulon understands and says, okay, well, let me escort you to your ship in that case. So Suvi says that she's going to learn everything she can, and she'll do everything in her power to prevent the Citadel and Wizards of the Imperium from doing anything to hurt spirits. So Suvi and Ursuline have this like kind of sweet heart-to-heart moment, embrace, not knowing when they'll see each other again. And Suvi then boards her ship. Really heartfelt moment that I'm not doing justice, but like Suvi tells Ursuline that she'd like burn down the world to come reach him if he needed her. And they both just talk about how much they mean to one another. But Suvi leaves to board her ship, and Ursuline decides, well, I'm going to go try to find the Antivalist. And if you recall, as soon as... All right, that hasn't happened yet. Sorry. So he goes to find the Antivalist, and he finds her. And there's this really funny scene of Tefmet basically trying to stuff equipment into a bag of holding, but is having a really hard time. And the long and the short of it is Ursuline uses his strength to kind of help force the items down. And then he casts like a divine sense while he's in this room just to get like pings on what's going on. And one thing is he notices a ping from the pocket watch that he's carrying, the one that the stranger, the man in black, gave him. And Ursuline asks Tefmet, hey, do you know about any other great spirits that have been bound? And Tefmet says, no, like you are the one that provided us with the first bit of like actionable evidence that had happened with Naram. We just know that they've been like researching those things. And then Ursuline basically says, well, hey, like, I want to help free other subjugated spirits. Like, so can we like work together on this? And Tefmet's like, I don't know if I can trust you. Like, you literally walked in here with Ame, who lied to her sisters, and with Suvi, who works for the Citadel. So like, how do I know that I can trust you? And and whose team are you on? And Ursuline says, I'm just on my own team. Like, yes, I want to protect Suvi and Ame, but like that's just because we're friends from childhood. Like, I have no allegiances to either of their factions. I am just doing this for me. And I think he rolls like a really high persuasion in this moment or somewhere in this scene. And it might have even been a nat 20, actually, I think. But he says, so if you help me, Tefmet, you're only helping me. You're not helping Ame. You're not helping Suvi. And I, again, believe he rolls a nat 20 here. So Tefmet believes him and is willing to, and says, you know what? The hour of risks is upon us. So why not? And it's at this point that Tefmet pulls out this piece of parchment, asks for Ursuline's name, or at least the name he travels by. And he says, Bear, the strongest man in Silbury. And Tefmet writes this down, performs some magic, and says the word Norwara, and then hands this parchment to Ursuline and says, make your way to the free roads to the south. Board any locomotive headed to any direction. Keep this ticket, which this piece of paper now resembles a ticket. Keep this ticket with you in your papers, like as you board, and then just listen while you're on this train. And at some point, you and only you will hear the announcement of the destination of Norwara, and that's when you need to depart the train. And only bring those with you whom you can trust, if you're going to bring anybody with you. She says that it would be an honor to help him in helping free spirits, and to good luck, basically. But before Ursuline leaves, he inspects some of the other things in this room, including the discs that help to subjugate Naram at the Derrick. And he realizes in looking at these discs that they've been magically altered, and that's how they've been able to subjugate the spirit. And it reminds him of his pocket watch, again, that the man in black gave him. So he pulls that out, looks at it, and basically there's this whole big moment here, especially because he had cast Divine Sense as well, where he realizes that there is a fourth hand, like a magical hidden hand on this watch, that when he uses it and accesses his spiritual breath with his divine sense, that hand will point toward a subjugated spirit, if there is one, like within range. So this thing will actually help him on his quest to find his brothers and sisters that need help. So we then cut to Suvi, who is boarding her ship, and basically says, hey, we gotta go. It's time. And Rasper immediately walks up to her and says, hey, was the mission successful? And she says, yes. And then he goes, okay, well, give me the object. which is referring to the music box. And Suvi just kind of ignores the request and says, "Get the ship off the ground. Like, we're leaving." And Rasper is shaken by this because he realizes that Suvi must have put at least something together. Like, Suvi knows that she was under the spells. Rasper doesn't know what to make of it, but he just says, like, "Yes, ma'am," and immediately leaves and complies. Suvi goes to her room. Shortly thereafter, Maddie knocks on the door and says, "Hey, I know we're about to leave, but you had a message waiting that we couldn't get to you while you were in the castle. And I had to transcribe it, so I'm sorry, but like only I've seen it. No one else has seen it." So she leaves it with Suvi, and it's basically a message from Silver, who has been garrisoned in the town of Abaddon. He tells her that Fort Kieran has been retaken, and forces are set to meet at a bridge over the over the river Lythwin in 2 days. And that name sounds familiar, but Suvi can't quite place it. She then basically pulls out all of her maps and tries to triangulate and pinpoint exactly what she can learn about force movements and stuff from what Silver had told her. And the ship is off, headed to the Citadel. And that's where, well, it's not where we break, but that's where I'll toss it over to you for the second half.
So great job, Will. The second half is an hour long, but it feels like 2 because so much
Yeah.
happens. And in the great words of our friend Brennan Lee Mulligan, buckle up because quite a bit is going to happen. We cut back to Ame, who's still in the Palace of Wind and Stars. Out a nearby window, she can see Marara, Hikea, and Grimoire, who are leaving the palace, and can overhear Hikea really like in full plan mode. Like, this is a now reawakened witch and the founder of the coven. And she's immediately like making these plans and also telling Marara, "We need to set up a plan with the man in black. We need to make this happen." Indri makes an announcement. It's very much like PA announcement-esque. I think her face like appears on the clouds, and they hear her voice basically saying, "Hey, thanks so much. Get out. I want some time to myself. You have 1 hour, and I would ask you to leave because I need to go." There's some comment about like going to her library because she's been surprised far too much in these last few days. So then Ame's like, "Well, I'm going to go look for Ursulon and Neef." Actually runs into Ursulon, and together they go to Toph, who essentially she asks Toph, "Hey," which if you don't remember who Toph was the coal spirit, supposedly, in the like bucket of coal near the fire in the abode of the World's Heart, the place for the World's Heart. Toph is sent to go find Neef. They have a little bit of time before they head out, and like every great D&D player does, they're thinking about the loot before this story ends. And Brennan points out that, "Hey, you're in the Tower of the Half Moon." And Erika Ishii is, "Oh, I know we are. I know what's at the top of it." And immediately they both begin to ascend the staircase to the top of this Tower of the Half Moon, where the Wand of Covenant is housed. They make it to the top. There's a simple magical spell on it that they use Wavebreaker to dispel. They step inside and they see a beautiful room with shimmering silver coins, trinkets, treasures, all sorts of things that have been sort of huddled in here. They see 6 pedestals that have glass display cases with an artifact under each one. And then lastly, they do see the Wand of Covenant resting on a bowl of frozen ice, of ice. And immediately they're like, "Okay, this is pretty cool." Looking at the items under the pedestals, and I'll just try to be brief, but also mention what these are. One of them is a mighty horn that is a horn of blowing. It's been partially scarred and is missing a gem. One of them is a large empty glass bottle, like one you would build a ship inside of. One is a small growth of blossoming briars that are going from a small red pot. The fourth one is a beautifully folded paper ship that's sitting on a book of folding paper. The fifth one is a grotesque and frightening molting pile of feathers with massive talons that have been severed at the thigh sitting on them. And the sixth is 2 doorknobs stacked on top of each other, resting on a bound and tied down lion's knocker, a lion's face knocker. Around this time, they hear Toph returning with Neef, and Toph's like, I know they're around here somewhere. And Ursulan's like, I'm going to go stall. Rushes down the stairs, immediately says to Neef, like, hey, I'm looking. This is also very peak D&D. I've been looking for the bathroom. Where's the bathroom? He has like a nat 20 deception check there. And then Neef has a nat 1 insight or investigation. And because of this, Neef is panicked. She's embarrassed. She's like, oh my gosh, a guest of our palace couldn't find the bathroom. I can't believe this happened to you. I'm so sorry. She begins to pull out a ring of keys to like hand a key to go to a certain bathroom. And in doing this, she drops the ring. They scatter everywhere, including like tumbling down a nearby staircase. She's panicking, trying to grab these keys. And Ursulan finally just says, hey, just give me all the keys and I'll go find a bathroom, and then you go wait somewhere else. Persuasion roll with advantage, 21. And she says, well, I'll go find the rest of the keys that went down the stairs, and leaves. And then we get just a beautiful moment from Brennan where he says, Toph basically, there's a moment of pause, and Toph goes, she's a nervous girl. It's just a perfectly like sums it up well. Ursulan rushes up the stairs, has all of these keys. They're spilling out. He's like, I think these keys will work for these pedestals. Meanwhile, the fox starts to eat the keys. And they're like, stop doing that. They can also, by the way, through the window, they can see the large like conservatory like roof of the library that Indri is in opening up as she's preparing to talk to the stars. And they realize with such few time, they only have like about 20 or 30 minutes left before they need to leave. They could only probably take one item. Ame looks at the knocker with the doorknobs on top and feels like this, I know this. This must have been from Grandmother Wren. And in fact, Brennan clarifies that all of these pedestals were actually gifts to Indri whenever she ascended to her role, her station of Wind and Stars. They open up, they use the key, they open up the pedestal, they grab the wand, and as they remove the cloth from the knocker, it immediately, like a party announcer, announces with this booming voice of, standing before me, here is a witch and a spirit and the witch's friend. And it's so loud that there's a nearby avalanche because it's just booming across this place. Ursulan panics, shoves his fist into the knocker's mouth to muffle it. And then they just grab the wand, they grab the knockers, and they just rush out. They run down the stairs, knowing that they've probably been discovered. This alarm has been sounded. And as they run down the stairs, they have a low dex roll, and they actually run back into Neef, who is carrying a chamber pot to give to Ursulan to go to the bathroom. And then knocking into her, the chamber pot flies into the air, lands on her head, and knocks her out cold. So very like, just like, oh my gosh, what do we do now? Ursulan lay on hands her, wakes her back up. She realizes what's happening. You guys are stealing. And with an insight check to Ame, Brennan reveals that Neef is going to be killed. She will be killed because of what the mistakes that she's made here. So they realize she needs to come with them. And Neef's like, well, no, I can't. And so Toph, bam, knocks her out as well. So now, knocker on Ursulan's hand, Fox is spitting up keys, Neef is over his shoulder, Toph and Ame running at full speed. They rush out into the courtyard where all the frozen statues are. And then Ursulan's watch points to one of the biggest statues, which they realize this is a bound spirit. And they begin to create a fire to try to free the spirit as like an escape plan because they have the bridle that was given to them. In this amazing moment, Toph realizes they need a bigger fire. He throws himself into the campfire, basically says it's been an honor, reveals his true form as a diamond spirit, as was heavily implied, and essentially causes the flame to roar and break apart this ice. And they see before them a rock, which is like a massive bird. You'd know if you play Heroes of Might and Magic 3, that's unrelated. And there's animal handling checks. They're like, we gotta freaking go. And it's very much like enemy of my enemy is my friend. Like, okay, hop on my back. Let's get out of here. Meanwhile, they can hear Indri screaming thief as she has no doubt discovered that Suvi was in her library stealing memories from her. The Aurora Borealis fades. A massive snowstorm forms. The storm is on the heels of the rock and our party. We cut over to Suvi, who's on the Meridian, and the storm is stretching out. I think Brendan actually described like a reaching fist, like trying to grab the Meridian. They have to rush downstairs because like shards of ice are peltering the ship. And when they get down there, the speaking mirror lights up with like this emergency message from Silver, basically saying, I'm making a call for anyone who can help me to please come to this town of Absinthe, where he's stationed. We're under attack. Anyone who can come help, please come. And then the mirror shatters. The message ends. And Suvi's like, that's where we're going. Change course now. And that is where the episode ends, except for a little stinger, a little nice little thing where Brennan describes a man by the name of Osment, sort of like not end of his life, just in an older age, as like the watchman of this small town. His wife wakes him up. It's the middle of the night. Says someone's been walking the road. Someone's been walking the road up to the gates of Holly Hill, the nearby abandoned castle. He makes his way up. It's the bleak of night. It's eerily silent. And at the castle base is the man in black. And Osmond is basically like, what are you doing here? This place is abandoned. Why are you here? And the man in black basically says, I've come to pay my respects. I've come to make an offer. And he holds up a shield with a hawthorn tree on it. And Osmond basically says, you're here to make an offering. And the man in black says, if you say so, will you give me permission to walk inside? And Brennan basically says that Osmond in this moment realizes that if he hopes to return safely, he ought to give the stranger what he wants. And that is the end of episode 34, Something to Remember You By, and the end of our third arc for The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One with Worlds Beyond Number. And if you checked out this whole recap, you got to check out the whole episode as we talk about this. Click the link down below and join the Discord to discuss it with us too.
It's well done, man.
Sorry that was so long-winded. I just like, as I was writing the notes, I was like, there's so much. Like,
yeah, that's how I always feel.
Yeah.
To be honest. But yeah, well done. Episode, I assumed you had, but I was gonna ask, like, you caught the post-credit scene, right?
Yeah. Which
that was so good,
too.
man. I was not expecting it.
It reminded me of that other one too, where it was like something with water or floating or something. I don't remember it well enough, but earlier, like in Arc 2, maybe, I think is when it happened. But
I don't even remember.
I think there was another one. Maybe I'm misremembering. Or maybe there was just like a sound effect that Taylor Moore had done with it. But bro, the escape sequence, like I literally was giddy, smiling and laughing through that whole, like, that was only like a 30-minute sequence. But I mean, I was driving laughing, thinking this is so freaking good. This is so fun.
Yeah, same. It felt like a hijinks in like a Disney Pixar movie or something.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly what I was I couldn't think of how to describe it. That's exactly right. Like I was visualizing the party running. I was thinking if this show ever gets animated, this would be the scene I'd want to see. Ursulon running, Knocker on his hand, muffled, trying to shout, a full-bellied fox belching up keys, Neef unconscious, Toph and Ame running. I just thought, man, this is so good.
It was such a great visual. It created such a great visual. Yeah, it was so much fun, man. I want to ask you, did Toph come or did he stay behind?
I think it was implied like he sacrificed himself, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. Like, yeah, he's a diamond spirit. He helped it grow real big. I didn't know if that meant he like traded his life for that or
I mean,
what.
like, I think it was implied he did, but also like physically speaking, I think the diamond's probably okay, right? I mean,
I don't know. I hope so. But that was
heavily
such
implied. I think he sacrificed himself.
that would make sense. That was such a beautiful way to tie all of that together too. Which again, it makes me wonder, like there's no way that could have been planned, at least not entirely. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's what I also love about Brennan's style is like there are no plot threads that there are no obvious empty plot threads where it was like, oh, that never went anywhere.
Yeah.
Like you kind of mentioned, like I don't think that was the intention of Toph originally, but to have Toph part of the escape and then like the heroic sacrifice in the moment. The other one that I think of too is this running theme of Sir Curran, which I think the implication is Sir Curran is within this
Yeah.
mausoleum,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because the
I
trick,
want to
yeah.
talk all about that.
So we'll get into that, but just point being that that early first foray into the world of humans by Ursulon, this meeting was not a random meeting. I mean, it on its own, it could have been enough just to be like this inspirational, like being a person of honor and like being on a
Mhm.
quest, but it being tied back, I appreciate the thoughtfulness of tying these things together.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And 100% with you on the Sir Kieran thing, but specifically with Toph and another example I want to tie in here in a second. I think it's just the way that Brennan is able to, because like I mean, with like Sir Kieran, I think that does have more overarching, like there was
Right.
intention there, but like with Toph, he Brennan couldn't have possibly planned how exactly would play off, but he just so perfectly like took that opportunity and made it this beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And I think the pocket watch I'm very curious about as well, because like that also just because like it doesn't seem as if Brennan like knew for sure that Ursula was going to go talk to Tefmet and like there was going to be this
Right.
whole thing. So I'm curious like the way he was able, and maybe the pocket watch always was going to do what it did, but he so beautifully tied all of those things in together at the same time, like revealing Ursulon, making this ally in Tefmet, and finding his new purpose of like going to help other subjugated spirits. And oh yeah, that gift you got from the stranger 2 episodes ago, that's just so happens going to perfectly align with enabling you to do that. So it's so cool how all those things come together with, again, I'm sure there's some intentionality there, but also just making the most of what your players decide to do
Yeah.
and making that all come together. Um,
Something, yeah, and something Brennan has said before. I think this was in the post calamity wrap up, or maybe it was the DM's roundtable, but basically a remark around like when you know your players well, you don't necessarily have to railroad because you know
yeah.
the decisions they're going to make. And so I think that's kind of the pain point as a DM is sometimes you feel like you have to create like 15 different scenarios, but if you know your players, it becomes a lot more manageable when those 15 go down to like 3 options.
Yeah.
Like pretty sure they're going to do this, but I have this other thing as an option. But anyway, I'd reckon Brennan's pretty good at all this DMing stuff, though. It seems like he's doing a pretty good job.
The
So
jury's still out. Jury's still
yeah,
out. Deliberating still. But no, obviously the man is fantastic at what he does. Yeah, and in the something that I thought was interesting, something that does not surprise me in the least, but was hard confirmed in the fireside chat was that he doesn't like write out speeches, or he doesn't write out like, so all that all that shit is improv. Like he has like bullet points, like he's a bullet point DM, like
yeah,
like maybe these are the things that I'm trying to navigate towards, or this is, and I'm totally, he did not say this. This is all my own speculation here, but like, we talked about it the other day, that the whole like calamity speech.
yeah.
And again, I don't know, maybe that one was written out, but he seems to be the type of DM that just flows, which completely makes sense for what we've seen him do, just the way he's able to be so poetic and stuff effortlessly. But it's just crazy to find that out, like hard certainty that like this man does not pre-write these things. He just comes up with them off the top. It's just crazy.
Well, and we know also that the speaking of improv, the identify
Yeah.
spell
Yeah.
from Suvi that was also improv from Brennan,
Right.
which is just incredible. What a great skill set, just for DMing in general. But I guess we could wax poetic about Brendan.
Brendan.
Brendan. He's his younger brother. You guys don't know him. He goes to under school. Brennan as much as possible. I guess we should, before we get into like the content, we could probably go ahead and wax poetic about Taylor Moore as well. Music, excellent. I feel like we've really hit peak sound design. Is that the way to put it? When
Yeah.
it comes to, I think for something it's not a visual show, so everything really hinges on the audio and the audio cues. And I feel like every episode gets better.
Mm-hmm. 100%. I even like mistakenly phrased that a couple minutes ago when I said when we were describing the escape scene, the Disney Pixar. I was
Yeah,
like, yeah, I was like, I saw it, but I clearly
yeah,
didn't see it, and
yeah,
I think
right,
that's in. I think almost. I don't want to say all, but most of the credit I think goes to Taylor. Obviously, Brennan and the cast are extremely talented at what they do,
right,
but like it's the music that really sets the scene that like lets
right.
you kind of paint that picture in your mind. So yeah, I agree. It keeps getting better. And yeah, there's a few moments in particular in this episode. Also at the start of the episode with Suvi and Ursulon and their like departure. The music really does just like amp it up to 110% in those moments.
Yep.
So yeah, as always, you guys will get tired of hearing us say it, I'm sure, but incredible.
Well, obviously, there's a lot we can talk about. I want us to have some space to talk about the arc as a whole,
Hmm.
which doesn't have to be long-winded either. But talking about the episode in particular, where do you want to start?
Um, I guess we could attempt to go chronologically. And again, I other than the fact that I really loved it, the stuff between Suvi and Ursulon, I don't feel like I have too much to say about it, unless you do.
No,
You,
the only data point. It's not even much to say. It's not even much to talk about. But the way they said goodbye was so well aligned with how they've designed their characters. You mentioned I'll burn down the world to get back to you line from Suvi,
yeah,
which just so well matches Suvi's personality.
yeah, yeah,
And then Ursulon's comments even before that about like being sworn to um Ame and Suvi being their protector. I just thought there were just some lines that were just very like I was like, yeah, that's Ursulon. Or like, yeah,
yep.
that's Suvi. So again, we don't have to go anywhere with it other than just being a fan, enjoying it.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, Ursulon's lines always get me a lot. Like they hit me right in the feels. But like where he was like, "So no, Suvi, like I am your protector. Like I will
Yeah.
not raise arms against you." And it's like that's my boy. Like he
And
always just know.
like for being so like probably like fairly kind and optimistic, I think about 2 episodes ago where Suvi was like denying that we know the Antipolis had brought the devices and they were talking about them and all that stuff. And then Ursulon had the like slam the fist down.
Yeah,
You were
yeah,
there, you saw it. I was like, oh, this is getting good.
yes.
So yeah. This is
Um,
pretty much this whole episode so far has pretty much been like, that one part? Yeah. I really like
that
that.
was
They're
great.
really
Yeah, me
good.
too.
Yeah.
Classic. But yeah, I loved their whole departure. I felt like it made sense, and it was also like because this is something we had talked about, and we'll probably circle back around to this, but in our previous episode about like, is Sufi gonna leave? Like, is the party gonna split? So like, I think
Yeah.
everything everyone did, I felt like was very in character, whilst
I kind
still maintaining their friendship. It's like, yeah,
yeah.
Suvi, you got to go. I recognize that, but like, I got to do me too. So I felt like
And I
everyone handled
appreciate
that well.
and I appreciate them sticking to the narrative of what makes sense rather than like D&D tactics. Like,
Yeah,
oh, we can't split the party, but being like, no, like Suvi being like, I have to go. It was like, yep, this makes
yeah.
total sense. So
Which I'm curious, and I don't know if we want to table this for later, but just since we're here, like I'm curious what that means for next episode. Like, are we gonna have a split party for a while, or
right.
or will there be somewhat of a time skip where everyone's back together, and that's where we pick up for whatever reason led to that. 'Cause it seems as if we're gonna have a split party for a while,
Yeah.
um,
It
which
does seem that way.
which they could do, but I'd be curious to see how it would work if so.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, moving on from there, one of the things I wanted to talk about was just the gifts, the knocker and the other gifts from the
Yeah,
witches.
yeah.
I'm curious. I'm glad they
Do you
took
think do you think that was improv too from Brennan?
like the gifts themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know. He
I was
did.
kinda wondering. I did listen to it again because I wanted to write them down, and I was just like, "I wonder if this is improv also."
That's a good point. I would guess. I would lean that it wasn't. Um, but I don't know because he one thing he did say in the fireside was that those gifts they all kind of represented an answer to the same problem. Like,
Oh,
so the other
interesting.
witches of the other Fanes of Power, like, gifted that to Indri as so like so they're all like magical items or whatever, right? But they don't
Right.
necessarily all do crazy different things. Like they all represent that witch's answer to some problem. Um,
Yeah,
so again, fill in the blanks with whatever that
interesting.
may be. But I thought that was curious. And basically, Indri had no use for them. Was what he also revealed was that like that's why they were like locked away here. It's because like, and again, he didn't like explicitly spell out anything, but the vibe was that like Indri didn't view that as a problem. Like, so she had no use for these items essentially.
And I love, like, the cleverness of how Brennan described all this in the sense of none of it is, like, in the trash. Like, Indri doesn't have, like, deep disrespect for any of this stuff, but all of these, like, incredibly just incredible things that are kinda like it's almost like an attic, and you find, like, a bunch of, like, random things that but it's also at the end of the day, like, a junk pile. I love, like, the
Yeah.
nuance of that, like, she so had disregarded these things, and yet they were each incredibly powerful. Well, maybe not, but magical items in their own right. And ultimately, we know that Indri doesn't have much. I don't say he doesn't have respect for the coven because I we do know there's an intentionality behind like it maybe like a line of intentionality behind being a coven of one, like still having the coven, but like being of the full force of
Yeah.
it. Um, but definitely like a disrespect's not the right word, but an indifference to her sister's presence, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, I just love like kind of the nuance of how that got designed. But
Yeah. Me too.
anyway,
And I'm curious. Well, of course, I want to know what each of those items does,
I
obviously.
know, I know.
But Brendan saying that they all represented an answer to the same question, as it were. I think they could very well like be nuanced and different, but the fact that like one was like an origami ship, one was like a bottle that like a ship would be in, but there was no ship. One was a bird. The door knockers. It evoked travel for me. So I wonder
Hmm,
if like each of those items represents like maybe the origami ship turns into a real ship, or the bird can fly you somewhere. The door like
yeah,
it's like a portal door or something, which I guess we'll find out what the door one does, hopefully. But
yeah. That's a good point, actually.
yeah, I just was wondering if you had any pulse on what you thought the doorknobs did or anything.
Um, the door thing for me was like a travel thing. The other items, I was just so curious about like their history that's kind of where my mind was like lost in thought about. Um, and I wonder if we'll see any of them again either. I do love like how that whole scene went from like we're just reclaiming the wand to like I'm gonna take it, and then
Yeah.
like, well, I think this was grandmother Rin's gift, so it really belongs to us. And it's like, well, it was a gift to Indri, but
Right.
and then naturally Indri, not Indri, Neef just being like, oh dang it, you guys are stealing, aren't you?
Yeah.
So
Which I wonder what will happen with Neef.
I guess they're gonna drop her off somewhere. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Hopefully.
I don't, and I also wonder like, what's like the rules of the game, so to speak, of like taking someone's apprentice, and
Yeah. And
it seems like there were some rules broken there.
yeah. And the door knockers too,
Yeah,
like, yeah, especially with all of like the rules in place at like these magical gatherings, with like dating back to like when Suvi first got there, like having to leave your staff and having to be invited. Like there seem to be these like rules of engagement. And
yeah.
so I feel like Ame definitely has invoked some bad
Yeah.
karma for lack of like, but I mean more literal than that, because we know like when Suvi grabbed Ame in the Citadel, and there was like
Yeah.
there was like that moment where it's like Ame could like hurt you for this type of thing. Like witches can use stuff like that. Seems like Indri could use this against Ame. But I did really like the way Brennan juxtapositioned that whole heist escape moment with Indri's scream, but her scream unrelated to what Ame
Yeah.
was doing. It was because of what
Yeah.
Suvi had done.
Yeah.
So seems like that is the more pressing issue. Plus, Indri does owe Ame, so like maybe she can, like maybe the door knocker's not a big deal type of thing.
Yeah. I loved also the irony of that, the storm being summoned to chase after the Meridian, and Suvi left because of the vote, but ironically, fortunately, because she left, the storm was just out of reach.
Yeah. Reminded me of the Mummy. Where like his face
Yeah.
like comes out to chase the ship or whatever.
Yes.
That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking of at that
The
part.
plane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great
Um,
movie, by the way. Great trilogy.
underrated. Maybe. I mean,
Is it underrated?
I don't know if it's underrated, but I feel like it's a classic.
Yeah, it's absolutely a classic.
At least the
And
first two.
I don't remember the third.
I don't know. I don't know if there was like a main title Mummy 3, but then I remember like they did like the Scorpion King with like the Rock, and
that was definitely a low point for sure.
We don't talk about that
actually, one. Not to get off track, but I think like the person who oversaw the development of that one, or like animator or something, like came out and like even they themselves were like, yeah, it was bad. Like they had to do it last minute or something. Like it was very like rushed production. So,
but yeah, anyway. Mummy 1 and 2, fantastic.
Mummy 1 alone was excellent. I will say when Tom Cruise came out with his Mummy movie, I thought it was in world and was disappointed that it was not.
Yeah. They were trying to launch like a whole universe with that movie. Didn't work out. Bro, one of the lines I love the most from the Mummy that like I don't ever quote it just because there's never really a chance to, and I also think that no one would get it, but it's when like after there's like a big kerfuffle on the ship, and then like Brendan and I don't know their names, but they're on one side of the river and everyone else on the other side. And they're like, aha. And he's like, well, we got the horses and you're on the wrong side of the river. And I don't know why, but that line always like stuck with me. So
I had the line where they read the book and the guy wakes up and says, you must not read from the book. Because in one of my campaigns, they found an ancient book and they read it. And I was like, how hard do I lean into just ripping off this moment?
Do it.
But I did not. But I wanted to.
Well, next time you should.
I feel like when I rip those moments, it goes like way over my players' heads. And then there's other things that I feel like are intentional, like are creative, like I came up with it. And they're like, you got that from Harry Potter. And I'm like, I don't even know. I never even saw that movie. I don't even know. And they're like, yeah, you did. And then we have like this 15-minute like side, like them pulling up like the scene. Like, do you see how it's?
Yeah.
I'm just like, like what can I do?
You should feel bad.
Yeah.
But no, that's why you just got to send it, because everything's happened once or twice before anyway. But yeah, I don't even forgot where we even were.
We were talking the storm, Indri's storm.
That's right.
Subi making her escape, the party making their escape. It seems like Suvi, the Meridian's changing course now, not going from the Citadel. And I like that little scene with Rasper, that little, like the unspoken tension between them was really good.
Yeah. I'm curious, especially now that they're not going back to the Citadel. I'm curious what may come of that. Because Rasper's going to go tattletale to Steel. And
I really liked Suvi having so when they got the letter from Silver, I was a little suspicious, but I was kind of like, okay, this is going to be something maybe we'll talk about.
Yeah.
I really appreciated Aabria being suspicious. Maybe isn't too right of the word, but like unsteady reading it, knowing like I can't fully trust this. This is very coincidental, smart, letter from my boo, right when I'm like a little unsteady about my allegiance to the Citadel.
Right, right.
So just shout out to Aabria for like playing out that thought process. I thought it made sort of like the subtext of that scene so much more interesting rather than just like, oh yeah, silver. So
Yeah, totally agree. I loved that too. And I'm curious, like, from her perspective, or even from your perspective, like, do you think the implication there was that the letter was doctored and like it wasn't even from Silver? Or just that whatever machinations the Citadel may be doing, that like Silver's in on it? You
I
know what I'm saying?
think
Like,
I think
do you think
well,
she thinks Silver's manipulating her, or someone is using her connection to Silver to manipulate her?
I think that's the challenge of the question of is
Yeah.
the not knowing. Like I think all of those situations are possible and there's no like leaning in any direction other than just it's like the fact that those are possible, like our possibilities is enough in her mind,
Yeah.
I think, to make like fully emotionally engaging with that letter so challenging.
Yeah.
Because it's like all of these things could be happening. I will say it would be very interesting down the road. I don't think it'll ever come up, but once that next arc gets resolved, I guess it would be interesting if Brennan was trying to slip something under the surface there, and Abria like smelled it out, for lack of a better phrase,
Yeah.
like caught the scent of it. Um, but who knows? I mean, it could also just be a letter, you know.
Yeah.
But I just I appreciate kind of the cracks showing in her relationship with the Citadel, I guess.
I did too. I really liked the self-awareness of Suvi in that moment. And I really like it so rings true for like a big argument you might have with somebody. Like for her and Ame, I mean, like in the moment they very heated, said not cool things to each other. But then when they split, Ame had Suvi's back. You know, she voted no. Like she, you know,
Yeah,
I guess I can leave it at that. And then similarly, Suvi, you know, was like, that's my family. I'm not just gonna burn down the Citadel, but now she steps away and on her own, she's thinking of these things. She's not just
yeah,
explicitly trusting this letter, you know, she's
right.
not agreeing to what Rasper tells her to do. So
Yep,
I just love the way they showcased that. It felt very
yeah.
real and human to me. Like, yeah, I'm gonna yell at you and disagree with you in this moment, but you made some good points. And like, you know,
Well, and then to verbatim take the words that one of the mages said to Suvi, is Rasper going to be a problem
yeah.
for this next arc? Like, what's
That
happening
was
here?
cool though, like because I guess chain of command really. I can't remember who said that to Suvi. Was it
I think
Maddie?
Brennan.
I meant like which NPC,
Oh, yeah. I don't know,
but
but
like
right, yeah,
in terms of like their allegiance lies with Suvi, not with.
yeah.
Well, I get Rasper clearly deranks her, but um,
Well, I think there was even an implication that Rasper isn't even necessarily of the Citadel, but of the Siraz Imperium.
oh right, which I guess
Because
that would make even more sense then.
I think Brennan described like the certain clothing that matched that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Um,
I think you're right.
which the implication of that detail makes even the mission to the North Pole even all the more interesting. Of like, it's not just Suvi there with the Citadel, but like this grander
Right.
organization, for lack of a better phrase, that's like on their doorstep.
Right.
So
Um, which you know, I think yeah, I think we talked about it last time, and there's not really a reason to re jump into it here. But obviously, just still very suspicious of Steel and everything that's
yeah.
going on with that.
Well, I'd like to move to talking about the stinger at the end and then
Yes.
the arc thoughts overall. But before we do that, are there any other data points that you want to park on?
Let me look really quick.
Look at mine
Um,
too.
I no, I think aside from the stinger, that was pretty much what I wanted to say. I loved that Ursulon used Wavebreaker kind of like a keyblade
Yeah.
to get into that locked door. But yeah,
Kingdom's heart is light.
that's right.
So okay. So we have the stinger. It's a big picture. We kind of already referenced it, but it seems like the man in black is visiting the grave of Sir Curran. interred within Holly Hill.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like kind of interesting details about this, but before I get into like the details, I guess the big picture, what do you think's going on with Sir Kieran? Is this like to convince Ursulon? Is this like to raise up a champion for the Man in Black since he's seeking one? Like, what was your thinking there?
Yeah, I think this is to resurrect Sir Kieran as an undead because we've had all these hints of like the dead walk freely in Rouge, and we still don't know like what exactly the stranger represents, but he seems to be very closely tied with death. So
Yeah.
I think he is going there to raise Sir Kieran as his champion because his vision when Ursulon turned him down, the whole vision was like, I had a vision of a champion with a golden pauldron and a shield, and that describes both Sir Kieran and Ursulon.
Yes.
So I think
Yes.
that like it was always Sir Kieran. Like he just
Mm.
mistakenly thought it was Ursulon because
Oh,
because
okay.
Ursulon has Sir
Yeah.
Kieran's pauldron.
Right. Right.
So that's my thought, which is crazy, and just especially because you talked about it earlier, how it just ties in Ursulon's whole narrative, from the
Yeah.
very beginning. Which it makes me wonder so many things. Like, will Sir Kieran have any agency? Like will he get to choose if he wants to be the champion, or will he be like a mindless undead slave that has to do it? Because would he join the Man in Black's mission? Like he wasn't a spirit, like he was a human.
Maybe he wouldn't have a choice,
Yeah, that's
you
what I'm
know?
saying. Like, but like in the
Yeah.
hypothetical realm
Oh,
where he
yeah.
did, like it doesn't seem
Yeah.
like he would want to join him. But like, I mean, what do
Yeah.
I know though?
Yeah.
Um, but just
I
and again, like I guess especially if he doesn't have agency, just the fact that like this man who was so honorable and set Ursulon's path about like finding a quest and finding a purpose, now like completely bastardized to be like Ursulon's main antagonist is just like a really cool narrative.
bro, it's it is such the injustice of it all is such a
Yeah.
compelling story thread for Ursulon. Because I've been wondering like what's next for Ursulon now that he found his family, and like there's the grander quest of like getting not being way shadowed anymore, I guess.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting direction for his character.
Yeah.
So I love everything you said about it. Um,
And it
I
seemed
don't.
like was the implication because we know that the stranger had come by way of Starling's Ford. Like that was
Right.
the direction he was traveling from. So I was wondering, like, did he go there first to see if like Sir Kieran's body was still just like at that battlefield?
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Since we know that he died there. And
Yeah.
then they described the hawk that's with him. The
Yeah.
stranger has a hawk. So I'm wondering
Yeah.
if that's Sir Kieran's hawk that he resurrected from the dead.
Oh,
Because the
I didn't
stranger
catch
never was
that.
described to have one before, right? Not that I
I don't remember.
remember.
Yeah, I don't remember. That's a
Plus, he had
great.
the shield, which I assume was Sir
Yeah.
Kieran's shield.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing he got the hawk and the shield from the battlefield. I don't
Yeah.
know why those wouldn't be with Sir Kieran at Holly Hill, but
Yeah.
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 So undead
Um,
bird familiar
the other
coming with him.
data point that I thought was interesting was just like continuing to respect like the rule set of spirits, for lack of a better phrase. Similar to the very first part of that episode where I think it was episode 1 where the stranger asked to be invited in.
Yeah,
Here is the stranger asking the groundskeeper, "Do I have your permission to
yeah,
walk this place?" So not much to say about it other than just I like how these little like kind of boundaries keep popping up. These rules of how spirits uh, engage with Umora.
yeah. Me too. Very vampire. In terms of
Yeah,
like have to be invited in.
yeah,
I liked that too. And I also liked the in that scene when Osmond, I guess, is walking up, he like the first thing he says is like, "Hey, hail, stranger," or something like that, and the
yes,
stranger says, "That's exactly right," or something like that.
yeah,
Like because he was just calling him stranger because that's like the colloquial thing you say to somebody you don't know, but like that is one of
yeah.
his names. I love that little detail.
Mhm.
Also, what's cool is in the fireside chat, they revealed that none of the cast knew that was coming. Like they
Mm.
only found out when the episode was officially released because they saw people online
Oh,
talking about a post-credit scene. And
yeah.
so Lou was like, "What? What are you talking
Yeah.
about?" And so like they went and pulled it up, and so Taylor and Brennan had like hid that from them as a
Yeah.
surprise.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
There's like a whole nother cast of like players. Like,
Which it's cool that I think Brennan made some comment to the effect of like something cool to do that on like an arc finale type of thing. So I don't know if it would be something that would happen a lot, but he just mentioned how cool it was because in D&D you're kind of limited to the player's perspective most of the time, but
yeah.
he actually shouts out Aabria because he was like one of my favorite DMs taught me this. It's like here's what you don't see and then you get to
Yes.
like paint this other picture. So especially with a
Yeah.
character as fascinating as the stranger, like I love that he did this and I hope we do even if it's
Yeah.
few and far between get more of these little like vignettes.
Yeah, I love these little like nuances that are particular to each DM, including that here's what you don't see. I did try that in my campaign of like a scrying eye,
Yeah.
and but my players like instantly like, do I see it? Like, what if I investigate this corner? I'm like, you don't know it's there. You don't know. So anyway, but they
This
were
is
definitely excited about it. So it's a good technique.
yeah, for sure. But yeah,
Um,
very exciting. Yeah,
wh-
I'm curious. It seems like Sir Kieran won't have his agency, but
yeah,
just very
yeah.
curious to see how that plays out.
What do you um what do you think about just the arc as a whole?
I thought it was fantastic. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I thought it was great, and I don't remember. I have no idea how long this was compared to Arc 1 and 2. Like, was it shorter? Was it longer? I don't know, but like I thought it was so well done for being like 24 to 48 hours like elapsed time
Yes.
in universe. Like it was never boring. It like I get pacing. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for necessarily. I feel like that's
Yeah.
simpler than what I'm trying to say, but I just thought it was very masterfully done in terms of getting a whole very intriguing chapter about this like one event over the course of a day, essentially 2 days.
It
Um,
looks like it was 10 episodes, I
okay.
think.
So,
Um, I,
I
I
mean,
was gonna say I agree with you completely. I
yeah,
Before it started, I wondered like what all is going to happen. Like, will the vote be like a few episodes, then they'll leave or something? I was like, surely it can't all take place here.
yeah,
This was like a 10 episode whirlwind of so much like great D&D, great interactions, great dialogue. So many incredible moments in hindsight, like that moment when Grimoire eviscerates one of the
yeah,
escaping mages.
yeah,
Um, the meeting, like the actual vote itself. I mean, the Morara and Ame meeting was so good. Um, it was an incredible arc, man. This is definitely my favorite arc so far, and I loved the first two also, but this was like S tier in my mind.
mm,
I thought it was very good.
yeah. I mean, not that it, not that it like wasn't my favorite, but I feel like I'd have to really like sit down and think about the other ones before I could crown it that. But it definitely like every episode feels like a great episode. So like,
It makes me bummed that I stopped listening to it with my wife because like we got to a point where it was so convenient for me to listen to it when I was on Tuesday mornings when I was driving,
yeah,
and so it just didn't really work with our schedule to keep listening to it
yeah,
together. But as this arc finished up, I just thought, man, she would so appreciate like where the story has gone and like what's happened.
yeah,
Um, so, but I think you're right. I think it's worth going back and listening to the first two arcs um, and again, it's very so far it's very palatable to do that because it's not like at 2 hours each, it'd be 70 hours.
yeah,
And not every episode's that long. So
right. And this
anyway,
is something I talk about with Critical Role with people a lot is that there's no race, there's no rush. Like if
right.
it takes you 5 years to catch up, but this is something that you enjoy in your free time, like who cares how long it
Yeah.
takes you? Like
Yeah.
it's a great story.
Another way to think of it too is just understanding the existential emptiness you'll feel when you finally
Right.
do catch up and you
Right.
realize you have to wait
Right.
for the next one to come out.
And then there's just
So,
the absolute emptiness whenever it finally finishes for good, you
oh
know.
no. Yeah, that's right.
That's the trade-off we have, you know. You get to
Yeah.
experience a great story, but then you have a little bit of sadness whenever it finishes.
Yeah. But it's also like the satisfaction that you got to experience it.
Yeah,
It's kind of like
totally.
when Calamity ended, I was sad it was over, but there was such a fullness of I got to experience something really meaningful.
Yeah,
And there's definitely like layers of that in Worlds Beyond Number too. I mean, it's been a very good story.
for sure. I did this is kind of random, but I did just remember that I think one thing they're doing in this interim break is I think we're getting a canon one shot but
Yeah.
set back when they were children.
Yeah. I don't know the detail. I didn't know they were children, but I did know that we were getting a one shot.
And I think someone else is DMing it.
I think that's true.
So I'm curious how that's going to work.
Yeah.
Like who, so will that character not be in it, you know? Like if it's
Yeah.
Erika, will Ame not be in it, or will Brennan play Ame or something?
Yeah.
But I'm sure the details may already be out there for us to know, but if they're
They
not,
might
I'm
just,
sure they'll come soon.
I mean, they might just NPC their player, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Um Trying to think.
I think that might do it.
Yeah. Fantastic arc, loved it just like I love the others. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts, especially if what you guys thought of it and if it was your favorite as well. But yeah, I'm very, very excited for arc 4, and I almost said something that I shouldn't have said.
I know, man. I'm with you. I'm with you.
But
Well,
yeah,
for our listeners, I'm going to ask you to obnoxiously, obsessively tell someone about this show. Let's get more people listening to it. It's such a delight and such a beautiful, incredible story. And if you are, you've made it to the end of this episode and you're not in our Discord by some random chance, click the link and get into our Discord and join us for some good Worlds Beyond chatter as well.
yes, please do. That's
Okay,
all I
well,
got.
yeah, we'll have some more content leading up to the next arc, but otherwise, we are somewhat signing off on our WBN stuff. So
We'll see you soon, and in the meantime, we got our Critical Role stuff. So if you're a critter, come join us over on that side of things. But yeah, until next time, my friends. Bye.